to take now in government. What are some of those decisions that you're facing?
Well, many decisions that will be difficult. Firstly, the whole question of how we get this economy moving. We have 700 job losses, as we know, in the MOD, with several hundred by way of knock-on effect. We have training schemes that we think have to be improved. We have a private sector that is not as competitive as it should be. So there will be a real need to work together to get tourism, the finance centre, the port and those other economic engines back on track. We will also, of course, have to deal with the question of dialogue. We've taken a very strong position on not entertaining any discussions on sovereignty whatsoever. But similarly, we have said that we believe it's in Gibraltar's interests to seek dialogue with Britain and Spain on matters of cooperation, on matters of tourism and commercial exchange, and that is not going to be easy to achieve. We've always known that this is a difficult agenda, that this is going to require firm British diplomatic support. So one of our priorities will be to ensure that our relationship with the UK is re-established to the degree and strength that is necessary, and on that basis then to see how we can move forward in areas that are to Gibraltar's benefit.
Your political opponents say that in order to achieve that level of support from the British government, there'll have to be a trade-off, that you'll have to give something in return, and that may eventually jeopardize Gibraltar. What would you say to that?
Well, of course, that has been their argument throughout the election campaign. And what's been clear is that the people of Gibraltar haven't accepted that analysis. They have believed what we have said. In other words, that it is possible for us to seek ways of getting British support and to entertain in dialogue without Gibraltar conceding 1 inch of anything that is fundamental. That is our position. As I said, we do not think it is something which can be easily delivered. We will work hard for it, but I can guarantee the people of Gibraltar that there is absolutely no question of the G.S.D making any type of concession or any type of compromise on any fundamental principle. We have made that very clear, and that we are only prepared to talk to Spain on the basis of the fact that it will only be on cooperation with the sovereignty guarantee that we have with us, and also on the tripartite basis that we have described.
Now, the manifesto contained many promises, many commitments, almost too good to be true, some of it, including the proposals on income tax, which I think party leader Mr. Caruana said would cost in the region of £4.5 million a year. Now you're actually in office, or you will be very soon. How are you going to deliver on all that?
Well, again, it is common for governments to criticise parties that have been in opposition for promising too much which cannot be paid for. We think our programme is modest, and let us understand what we're saying on tax. On tax, what we're saying is that our basic commitment is to bring back personal allowances to the level of 1988.
Immediately?
No, within the first term of office, we say.
Within the first year, I believe.
Well, yes, within the first year, the reduction to the 1988 levels. We also have within that first term of office a commitment to try and keep them up to that level by actually making them inflation-proofed throughout the 4 years. That is the basic commitment. That is something that we feel is necessary to correct the tax increases of the last 8 years. Our plans for tax obviously are more extensive in the long term, but one has to be responsible. The priority is jobs, the priority is to bring business to Gibraltar, the priority is to stimulate the private sector, and I think that will be our first concern before further tax reductions after the immediate priority that I have indicated.
In the manifesto, you highlighted the port as one of the major growth areas for the economy, but you, maybe conspicuous by its absence, was the airports. What's going to happen with regard to the airport and, of course, the infamous airport agreement with the G.S.D government?
Well, again, our position on this has been very clear. We totally reject the 1987 airport agreement. There is no way the 1987 airport agreement is implementable for many reasons. One, because it has implications on sovereignty. Secondly, because it has been superseded by EEC directives. But there is a perception internationally, we have to face this, that a perception that is wrong, of course, that it is Gibraltar that's being intransigent on the question of air traffic. And therefore we think what we have to do is correct that perception. We have to demonstrate to Britain that Gibraltar is prepared to expand their services to Gibraltar, that we have no difficulty with Iberia or any other Spanish airliner using Gibraltar, but it has to be on terms that are purely commercial, within the context of community directives, and without any sort of joint control or joint sovereignty or joint use of any type of that, with any implications of that type. That is our position. We will defend that more proactively than the GSLP have done, and we think that if we are able to achieve greater air traffic to Gibraltar, even within the existing parameters of the airport, even if we don't achieve any sort of a breakthrough on the airport, we think that there is a need to expand air services here, even from the UK, to introduce more competition on our route and to bring more long-stay tourists here.
Do you think that your government will have any success in renegotiating or in redefining the terms of the Brussels agreement, which of course is one of the major obstacles that we've had in the last 10 years hanging over our heads?
Well, again, we've made well clear what our position on this is. We are not prepared to have any talks with Spain unless those talks have three voices, three parties to it, ourselves, Britain and Spain. So with regard to Brussels or otherwise, Brussels would have to evolve into a tripartite forum. If it doesn't, there will be no dialogue. We are persuaded that since the UK is of the view that three-way dialogue is the way ahead, that it is impossible nowadays to talk about problems with other Gibraltarians whose future it is all about without us being there. But since we are persuaded that the UK is convinced of that position, that we will be able to work with London to get Spain to agree to that. But I can guarantee that it will only be on a tripartite basis that dialogue, whether under Brussels or otherwise, will take place.
The GSLP leader, Joe Bossano, has suggested that not that perhaps the G.S.D would want to do a deal with Spain, but that it might be subjected to pressures that you will not be able to resist as effectively as he has resisted in the past 8 years. What would be your reply to that?
Look, let's destroy this myth once and for all. Mr. Bossano is no champion of Gibraltar over and above the shoulders of everybody else. The GSD has a very firm commitment on a British Gibraltar, on a Gibraltar that should decide its future, on a Gibraltar where the only people that have the right to decide a future status is the people of Gibraltar. There is no agenda whatsoever for any sort of arrangement or agreement for Spain, and the people of Gibraltar today, by the sort of support they have given us, have understood and believed us in our assurances. All we are saying is that by shoring up our relationship with the UK, we will be able, if Spain gives us a voice, we will be able to establish cooperation on tourism and commercial matters. If Spain is not prepared to do that, then talks will fail. But there is absolutely no question, and Mr. Bossano should not go on deceiving the people of Gibraltar into letting them believe that our agenda is anything other than cooperation without any implications for sovereignty or any fundamental issue whatsoever.
A final question, Mr. Montegrifo. Mr. Bossano told us in an interview a short while ago that the GSLP will not be unnecessarily obstructive in opposition. Do you think it will be possible for you to work, if not in collaboration, at least not at loggerheads with the GSLP?
Well, Stephen, our style has always been to try and work in consensus. We have lamented and have criticized the GSLP for being a party that has wanted to go it alone. Indeed, Mr. Bossano has wanted to go it alone. Since when, as you know, Gibraltar's foreign affairs have to be conducted in such a way that only one man seems capable of defending our position? We hope that Mr. Bossano and the rest of Gibraltar will respect the democratic decision that has been taken, and that there will indeed be no unnecessary obstruction. Gibraltar has chosen a new government. This government has to work in partnership with the people, as I've said, and Mr. Bossano and no one else should interfere with that democratic mandate which we have been given.
Mr. Montegrifo, thank you very much. We go down to the hall.
I wonder if all of you on the side could move on to the other side so that Mr. Bossano and his people can have some room in the theatre.
Terry Cartwright, the election agent for the Social Democrats, appealing to her party loyalists who are now sitting here in the John Mackintosh Hall to move to one side because there are a fair amount of empty seats in between. So she wants people to move and make space for representatives of the GSLP who also want to come in, including, of course, Joe Bossano, who will take his seat in the auditorium. There is still about between half an hour to 1 hour to go before the official results are announced. There are about 8 or 9 counting rooms which have not yet completed the counting of ballot papers and votes, although of course the indication is there as to who the winners will be, but everything has to be counted up to the very last one, all those 16,168 votes cast, or at least ballot papers cast, to make sure that everything is 100% correct. As Dennis Figueres has repeatedly said, umpteen security and umpteen arrangements to make sure that everything is correct. Now we have more G.S.D candidates to talk to. They're very happy, of course, because they have won the 1996 general election, the 8th since the 1969 constitution. And with me now is Hubert Corby. Mr. Corby, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Good.
You've been in opposition for 4 years. You haven't had to wait much to be in government, have you?
Well, I was elected in 1992 and I was in opposition, a strong opposition against government. And then we went to this election with a very professional sort of campaign, and the people of Gibraltar have spoken today.
So do you think that it was the campaign, the fact that it was a polished campaign, was the crucial factor for you to win the election?
No, the campaign is just the trimmings of whatever policies you have. I think that we have a very good manifesto and we have a lot of policies which appeal to the people of Gibraltar. They saw where Gibraltar was going, and I think that the voters in Gibraltar are very sensible, and they vote for people who are conscientious and would bring Gibraltar back to what it was some time ago.
Why do you think that the people actually went for you specifically? Because all the parties were giving their promises, were saying what their ideas were for the future 4 years. What clinched it for you?
I think we have the strongest team that's ever been put to the people of Gibraltar. We have a lot of brains in the team. We have a strong team. We are one with each other, and I think that is what the key element in the G.S.D at the moment.
So when does work start? Keith Osopardi said that, well, it starts today, Friday.
Yes, actually it starts today. So after here we are having some breakfast and then back to work.
Already, and swearing in as well, isn't it?
Swearing in by the governor as well. So they'll have to tell us the time. It hasn't been arranged yet, but I think the swearing is being done today as well.
When do you find out exactly what portfolios will be distributed amongst the ministries? Who will get what?
I think that we'll have to meet, a council of ministers will meet, and then the portfolios will be distributed between us.
Is there anything in particular that you'd like? I know that you're quite strong on social affairs.
I'm very strong on social affairs and housing. This is my two areas which I've been dealing in opposition with, and I think that I would gladly take those two on.
The drugs issue is also something that you feel very strongly for. Will that feature prominently in your ministerial tenure?
Well, yes, it's something that I've always had, and it's in my heart to take drugs away from the young people of Gibraltar. We've got to have an educational campaign. We have to have a rehabilitation center in Gibraltar and pass whatever laws are necessary to take the cancer off Gibraltar.
The other day I was taking notes as all of the G.S.D candidates were speaking from the but from the Winston Churchill Avenue Bridge between Laguna Estate and Glacis. You were very strong on the launches issue. You said that not 1, not 5, but 0 launches in the future. They will all go immediately. How will you achieve that?
Well, by patrolling and by putting in the necessary laws to take the launches away. It's no good leaving 16 ribs and having the police look after them and see what they're doing. They're certainly not fishing in the bay.
So this is something that will be a concerted effort from the G.S.D government. It's something that you will give priority?
We will give priority to rid Gibraltar of drugs and illicit trafficking.
Do you think that will ease relations with Spain? At first stage, I know that you're all in favour of dialogue, but will this ease the relations with Spain insofar as their allegations of drug trafficking in this area?
Well, in as far as drugs is concerned, I take away anybody. It's not because Spain says anything or Braña says anything. It's because Gibraltar wants to take the drugs away from our city. Spain is taken out of the equation when the drugs issue comes on.
Okay, Mr. Corby, congratulations once again, and no doubt we'll be talking quite often now since you've now become a minister of this government in Gibraltar.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. And that's Hubert Corby, one other of the successful G.S.D candidates in this election, talking to hopefully all of them between now and when the returning officer announces those official results. And next on set with, believe Stephen, is Jaime Neto.
Well, thank you very much, Gerard. And yes, as you said, the returning officer will announce those results in about an hour from now. It really is taking a lot of time on this particular occasion, but we will wait. The theatre is now full. Some space has been made for the opposition supporters. They will be coming through in just a moment. But as Gerard also said, with me in the set here now, on the set, is Jaime Neto. Jaime, how are you feeling?
Well, very tired indeed. very pleased that we've got these results from the people of Gibraltar. I think we conducted a very positive campaign. We've talked about the issues that matter, the daily issues, the bread and butter issues, and I think we strike the chord with the people, and that's why we are now in government.
Do you feel that it's been dirt in any way? There's been a lot to talk about that.
Yes, there has been, but ask myself whether it's the time now to start pointing fingers. I think that what we would like to do in government is to start healing the divisions which has sort of been created in the last 4 to 8 years. I think that would be a measure of good government. We've got to try and put this behind us. Gibraltar got a lot of serious problems to face. We need to start uniting the people, and we hope that we will be the necessary tool to do it.
So what would you ask of the opposition?
Well, looking at it from a democratic point of view, in any system of parliamentary democracy requires an effective and constructive opposition. They need to have the proper resources. We will give Mr. Bolzano in the opposition the tools that he never gave us. That is to say, we will provide them with proper statistics on the time, not just to him, but to everybody in public, you know. And where there are matters that the opposition perhaps should come in to be involved, well, we are allowed them to be involved. Now, on the other side of that particular coin, of course, is that what we will not accept is a return to Mr. Bolzano's tactics of the 70s in undermining the ACR. You know, we will not allow any political manipulation, be it in the unions or be it anywhere. We have now been elected to govern Gibraltar. We will do it in partnership with the representative bodies and indeed, whenever possible, with the opposition. But we will govern Gibraltar for everyone.
Is implicit in what you said that you think that perhaps Joe Bolzano will go back to the unions now?
Well, I hope not, because we're not living the 70s, we're living the 90s. In my mind, one of the reasons that we are being elected to government is because people are fed up in the way we're being governed and ruled in the last 4 years particularly. That means that we need to change, evolve. Our campaign in itself has been a very positive one, dealing with the real issues. Things like the economy, things like employment, things like security of employment at work, proper training for our youngsters and unemployed, you know. Things have changed. Gibraltar is changing all the time. We want to give the people of Gibraltar the chance to change into the new world which is around us.
Well, a lot, of course, was printed in your manifesto. Some say too many promises that you won't be able to deliver. Well, now it's real. You are going to be apparently government. Do you think those policies are going to come true? Will it take very long to implement?
I disagree with the point of view that many of our promises was impossible to deliver. For instance, talk about the reform of taxation. I mean, we've had the GMP saying that it would cost 28 million when quite clearly didn't know what they were talking about. At the very most, it's something like 4.5 million on a 4-year term.
So where's the discrepancy? Where have they got it wrong?
Well, basically,
or have you got it wrong?
No, we haven't, because we've done it in two particular ways. We've actually asked the Financial Development Secretary to do it for us. We said this is what the policy for the first term of office would be, and he's actually costed it for us. We've had other costing which were not as accurate because of the statistics were lagging behind since April 94. But in any case, what we're basically saying is restore the allowances to the level that were in 1988, because by not having been adjusted to cope with inflation, basically we've had tax increases. So that is one of the examples. The other example, for instance, a question of giving citizens consumers' rights. Whether if you're a consumer or a citizen, you should have a citizen advice bureau. Every single modern community in Europe has one. You know, we should have it. We should give it to the people. And again, an ombudsman because if a particular person is aggrieved or been treated unfairly in any of the various government departments, he should have a place where to go to. You know, he should not be sort of shoved from pillar to post until eventually nobody actually pays attention to. I mean, this is part of the evolution of the democracies in Europe. That's why Mr. Bolsonaro has been stagnant. You know, he has been sort of saying, oh, don't vote the G.S.D, there's a bunch of palomos, think what happened in the past, you know, and people have seen right through them. They know that they are safe with us. But not only they're safe with us in terms of the external issues, but they know that we have to do a lot of work on the internal issues.
Is there any inclination at this stage of what ministries you'd all take? Perhaps you wouldn't be free to tell us about that, but perhaps what ministry would you like to tackle?
Well, obviously, it very much depends on the way the leader of the party actually designate a particular role. Well, I mean, your question was what I would like. Obviously, I've always been dealing things with labor matters. So, I mean, there are a couple of areas where I can very happily fit, but at the end of the day, it's not what I think I should be, but what the party leader thinks.
Do you have any apprehensions about what it would really be like on the other side of the House, that of course is being in government? Because it's one thing seeing it from the opposition benches and saying what the government of the day is doing wrong, and it's another thing getting there and finding that it's tougher than what you envisaged.
Well, there must be an element of truth in what you're saying, because Mr. Bolsonaro has been hiding away not just from the opposition, but from Gibraltar, the true extent of what the real position in the economy, the lack of statistics that I was actually referring to just a while ago. So to a certain extent, obviously we want to be in government to make the change in direction, which is what the people have voted us for in. But I must confess as well that I'm a bit sort of apprehensive, if you like, because there's a lot of work. We are committed, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and we hope that we serve the people well. Any
surprise at the margin that you're winning at the moment? We don't know what the final figure is yet, but 80% of the votes counted, you had just under 12%. Is that larger than you thought?
Personally, yes, I am surprised. Bearing in mind that the kind of result that Mr. Bolsonaro had in 1992 is something like 73%.
Against your 20?
Against the G.S.D 20. So the margin of the swing is so big, you know, that I personally was expecting something like a 5% lead. But as I said before, I think we've struck a chord with the people.
Mr. Neto, good luck.
Thank you.
And we now move back to Gerard, who's down in the hall. He has more for us.
Yes, and back here it's fairly calm now, because people are now expecting what has to arrive in the next few minutes, and that of course is Peter Caruana, who will lead his candidates into the auditorium to take their seats, and indeed to witness returning officer Dennis Figueres announce the winners of the 1996 election. Some of the boxes have already arrived, but there are still a few which need completion. Those are still being finished. And as we wait, let's find out some reaction from some of the G.S.D supporters who are here in the auditorium. For example, this gentleman. And what in fact has been your reaction? I know that you're a G.S.D supporter, you can't deny that with a rosette. What is in fact your reaction this morning?
My reaction? Well, I'm very happy with the result of the election, and I think that the result is going to be for the good of the whole of Gibraltar. And we hope that our future now goes for the better.
What do you think the priorities of the G.S.D government should be?
Well, they've said so already. Their priorities will be firstly employment, creating jobs, getting the economy going, and leaving the question of foreign affairs to the side for the moment, and getting our house in order.
Would you share that view?
Certainly, absolutely. In fact, everything that's detailed in the manifesto, in fact, is what will be done. In fact, initially we'll have to have some time, because, I mean, you can't do everything overnight, and particularly there's a lot to be done. But definitely so, yes.
Why do you think the G.S.D has been voted in today, the 16th of May?
I think primarily because there has been a mockery of the democracy process in Gibraltar, and I think that people have now stood firm that they want Gibraltar as it used to be, and we want to restore democracy to the full.
Okay, many thanks indeed. Congratulations, because I know that you're both supporters of the G.S.D. Many others here, for example, this gentleman who's saying, no, don't talk to me. We're going to come here because they're calling me over, so they're quite eager. Now, what is your reaction?
My reaction? Very, very, very happy. Very happy. We're all very happy. We've all worked very, very hard, and we're all very, very happy that of the final outcome of the of the elections.
So you're all party activists here?
Yes, we are.
So how hard has it been over the last 3 weeks?
It's been a hard battle, but it's nice because we won the war.
Was it that bad?
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's been hard. It's been hard work, but I mean, it was worth it. We've enjoyed it, and here's the result.
The campaign has been criticized by some, and it's been said that it's been a dirty campaign and a lot of bickering. That's one word that's been used a lot in this campaign. Do you think that that is actually correct? There has been a lot of bickering. It has been dirty.
Not dirty on our part. I think we've just stated the truths as we've seen, and the mudslinging has come from the opposition. You know, well, the opposition now. As that's as far as I can see it. You know, all we've said is the truth all along.
Okay, there's a pause now because Joe Holliday is on his way. We're going to talk to some more of these activists in a minute. Joe Holliday returning that applause to his supporters. There you are, very happy Joe Holliday here as he entered. And Mr. Holliday, congratulations first.
Thank you very much.
And, well, what is your reaction? That has to be the first question, because this is something that perhaps you were not expecting, or you were?
Well, I was definitely expecting us to win. The polls were indicating it, and everybody was saying the same thing. I think there was a need for the people of Gibraltar to speak loud. They have done so. We haven't yet got the final results, but I'm sure they will confirm what I'm saying.
What clinched it for you?
Sorry?
What clinched it for you?
Well, I think it's been our way of responding to the needs of this community, and I think addressing the major issues and the problems which are at stake. It wasn't just a problem of going forward with no policies. We've created the policies. We've seen the vision for the future, and I think people of Gibraltar have backed us.
Well, in the campaign, you've said that we have to regenerate the economy, we have to give the right resources to the port, to tourism, and all that. When do you get down to work to, in fact, put your policies into practice?
Well, you know, I'm an economist, and I'm a firm believer that Gibraltar has immense potential. I'm really looking forward to getting this thing going. I think Gibraltar has economic potential to, you know, employment is one of our major problems. This can only be solved unless we produce economic activity.
Obviously, we don't know what portfolios will be distributed yet officially, but what would you like to get?
Well, I don't know. I presume it's probably within the area of economic development, maybe tourism, maybe finance sector, but probably definitely within the area of trade and industry.
What would you say to your party activists? We were just talking to a few there. They've said that they've really worked hard over the last 3 weeks. So what would you say to them? Is it down to them that you've won?
Well, I think they've played a major part. I think they have worked tremendously. Their dedication has been 120%, and I think we owe a lot to them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Joe Holliday, who thanks his party activists all around me here. And, well, we're going to talk to a couple more, and as we continue our conversation with them, because it was going quite well, I think, because there is a good atmosphere here today, and we were talking about the campaign being dirty and not being dirty, but what was the reaction of the people when you actually went out in your hustings and you met them face to face?
I think the reaction actually has been extremely positive. I think one of the unique things about this election, as far as the G.S.D. is concerned, has been that you've really had a feeling of unity, and that people wanted a breath of fresh air in local politics. And I think the massive turnout that we've had, and the result which has obviously gone our way, is proof of that.
Okay, many thanks indeed, and congratulations to all of you here, the activists of the G.S.D. who helped in the campaign. Now we're going to go back to Stephen Niche in the set.
G.S.D. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you, Stephen.
Your reaction to the win?
Well, we're delighted, obviously. It's been a long campaign. We thought the election would be earlier than it was, but we've been involved for a long time, since back November. It's been a tiring campaign, but it's been well worthwhile. I mean, to win the way we won is very rewarding. And I must put in a word for our supporters and for the party helpers. We've had a tremendous team of helpers, and without the support, without the help, we would never have made it.
In fact, the last survey that we had, after 80%, showed you with a lead of 12 points over the GSOP. Yes. More surely than you could have expected for in your wildest dreams.
Yes, I mean, even the most optimistic polls, one of them I think put us at that level, most of the others put us that or lower. So yes, the honest answer is we felt that the people of Gibraltar wanted a change, but the overwhelming way in which they have given us that change has been humbling and but also very pleasing.
What actually happened, do you think, to swing it in your favor so decisively during the campaign?
I think a number of things have happened towards the end that have made people move away from being undecided to making up their minds. But I don't want to be controversial at this stage. I think we've won a good victory. I think the time now is to look forward, to think of the Gibraltar, to think of what has to be done, and to think of how we need to improve Gibraltar, and obviously bring back the Gibraltar that people want.
How are you going to do all of that?
Well, obviously it's not an easy task, but I think people tell us that they have been impressed and that they have liked the way we have been open, the way we have explained our philosophy about a better Gibraltar, the way we have highlighted that some of the things that have been happening people obviously haven't liked. So there are a number of things that have to be reversed, and there are a number of new things that have to be done. But I think in a nutshell, I would say people want a return to traditional values, and I think that sums it up.
Don't you feel, Mr. Brito, that's an inexperienced government? Of course, you're just taking office now. We have a change of government recently in Spain, and the signs are that it may be a very tough government against Gibraltar. Isn't there a chance, isn't there a risk, rather, that the G.S.D may buckle under the pressure?
No, I don't see why at all. I mean, when the GSLP came into power in 1988, they were equally or even more inexperienced, because, I mean, if you weigh up the, dare I say, the caliber and the strength of the team that the GSD have put into government today against what the GSLP put in 1988, then I think we are better equipped. That the PP in Spain have come in making strong noises against Gibraltar. Well, what's new? Every government that comes into Spain makes aggressive noises towards Gibraltar. We know this, we expect it. We don't have any misconceptions. We know that the Spanish government will never do us any favors. We know the line we have to take with Spain. There will be no negotiations on sovereignty. There will be no concessions on sovereignty. We are prepared, as we've said, to try to dialogue if it can be done on our terms and with a voice for Gibraltar. And if it cannot, well, then there will be no dialogue. It will be up to Spain. And we will concentrate on doing things for Gibraltar and improving Gibraltar as needs to be done.
How confident are you, in fact, that you can persuade Spain to talk to you under your terms, basically?
Well, if you ask me personally, I am not very confident. I think Spain may well stick to its present line, and our line is quite clear. There will be no talks unless Gibraltar is represented with its own voice.
You've also made a lot during the campaign and in your manifesto about restoring links with Great Britain. Isn't there also, again, a risk there that by wanting to get closer to Britain, that you will have to trade something off in exchange, that they will ask you to make some concessions to them?
No, I don't think so at all. I think one of the things that the last administration was doing wrong was that it went down the path of confrontation with Britain, public confrontation with Britain, which does nothing to help the relationship with Britain. And we obviously, as we all know, we got very near towards direct rule last July, and it seems to me that Britain has taken a gradually harder line and has been withdrawing from its relationship with Gibraltar. I have said for a long time, and I still maintain that time has come to sit down with Britain, as a matter of priority, sit down with Britain and try to work out what the relationship between Britain and Gibraltar should be. And that should be done as a matter of priority before even thinking about talking to Spain. We have to sort out our relationship with Britain. We have to know where we stand with Britain. We have to know how far Britain is prepared to go in supporting us. And once we have that clear, once we are safe in how far we can go, then is when it comes the time when we can talk to Spain, in partnership with Britain, together with Britain, not on our own as the last administration wanted to do.
You say that this is a priority. How soon will you be seeking a meeting, a reunion with the Foreign Secretary or with other government officials?
As you appreciate, we haven't even been returned into office yet because the official announcement hasn't yet been made. But I suspect we shall be doing it very much as a matter of priority, so very soon. But of course that will be up to Peter Caruana, not up to me.
On domestic issues, some have said during the campaign that the G.S.D promises a lot in its manifesto and that it's not going to be possible to keep all those promises.
Well, I mean, it's only natural that parties opposing each other should attack what the other people are proposing. If you analyse the things that we've proposed in our manifesto, most of them are basic common sense, most of them are items that can be done at very little cost to the community. Those that cost money, like for example the tax cuts, one of the parties contesting the election was going around saying that it was going to cost something in the order of 28 million pounds. I don't know where they got the figures from, but they were totally wrong. The costings are more in the area of 5 million pounds than 28 million pounds. And those are official figures supplied by the Secretariat, the Treasury in Gibraltar, not even calculated by us, calculated and confirmed by them.
But that's 5 million pounds a year.
That is 5 million pounds a year. That's
so
right.
It's 20 million pounds for your mandates.
That is assuming it is all done in the first year. It is we are
in the first term.
In the first year. No. If we do everything in the first year, then it's 5 million pounds. Our commitment in the manifesto is to phase in the allowances over the first term of office. So it's not necessarily 5 million pounds in the first year.
If I understood your manifesto correctly, the commitment on personal allowances was actually in the first year and not in the first term of office.
Well, I think you ought to read it again.
Well, we'll both read it after the interview.
The commitment is in the first term of office.
It's in the first term of office.
Yes, it is.
All right. And what about other commitments that you have there? You also had, for instance, one of your main planks in the economy was tourism, and you said you were going to have a large leisure and recreational centre. Where's the money going to come from that? Is that in the private sector?
That money, there are plans for that already. There are investors in the private sector who have been interested in coming in and making this investment in the past. There is more than one investor interested in doing this. It is now a question of reviving this project, or should I say bringing it into fruition and identifying the site, carrying out the final studies and bringing it into fruition.
Can I ask you to reiterate another of the commitments in the manifesto, which was to pay in full for the Main Street beautification?
Yes, that I can do that. I reiterate that commitment. It's something that the last government should have done from its inception, something that the Chamber of Commerce wanted them to do, but they were not prepared to do it, and rather than see the beautification go down the drain, they accepted a partial payment by Main Street traders. But we think that it was a miscalculation. We're prepared to go forward and fund the whole thing.
Just before I let you go, a final question, and what will be the main priority now of the G.S.D government?
I have always said that the main priority is to sort out a relationship with Great Britain. And together with that, hand in hand, is to give back to the people of Gibraltar the pride in the Gibraltar that they have always had, and that of late they seem to have lost. A return to be able to walk down the street and look at each other in the eye, not be worried about who is watching them, who they're speaking to, not be worried about what other people may be thinking about who they're associating with, or what clubs they belong to, or what their membership or what. A return to freedom and total democracy that we have always enjoyed.
Mr. Brito, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
And now it's back once again to the auditorium, where I think Gerard has a guest with him.
Yes, and I'm joined this time by local journalist Paco Oliva from the Gibraltar Chronicle. And good morning, Paco. It's been a long night, hasn't it?
It's been a very long night. It's been very exciting night, and now here we are, the culmination of 6 months of an extended election campaign.
What's been your reaction, your journalistic reaction to this general election when a new government for Gibraltar as we approach to the year 2000?
Well, my gut feeling was that the elections are going to be very, very close. Really, it has been a surprise to see the extent of the lead that the G.S.D has managed to obtain. It's been quite surprising. I think I was discussing it with my colleagues earlier on. You know, we have all been quite surprised by the extent of the lead. I mean, even though the opinion polls have been consistently predicting the G.S.D victory, I mean, the collapse of the GSLP vote has been so dramatic and spectacular that really, I mean, it was very difficult to predict this, you know.
Well, most of the polls were proved right at the end of the day, regardless of what people say about polls.
Well, that's right. Despite the criticisms and despite, you know, that in some quarters, you know, plenty of criticism has been leveled at the polls, at the end of the day, I mean, they've really come up with the goods, you know. I mean, they've really given us an indication of the final results.
What sort of government do you think this G.S.D government will be? How different will Gibraltar be, well, as from today?
Well, I think that, I mean, the election campaign has been such a bitterly fought election campaign, and it has been, Gibraltar has been divided and polarized to such an extent that, I mean, I don't know what the G.S.D government would bring. I mean, what I would like them to bring about would be solutions to what I consider as Gibraltar's main problem, which is job creation and unemployment problems. You know, I think that's what they should devote their energies to, you know, to creating jobs and you know, finding economic solutions to the problems that we have. I think that I would consider that to be the main issue which they should address.
What about, you mentioned there, the divisions which have been created in the community, polarization of opinions. Will that take a lot of plasters to bring back together?
Well, I mean, I sincerely would hope so, that now that the elections are over, the opposition oppose democratically but allow government to carry out the program, which is, after all, what the people have voted. But I mean, I'm not sure whether overnight all these wounds which have been produced, in the past, as I said in my initial statement, I think that we've been living an extended election campaign perhaps since December, So, I have my doubts whether these wounds, these very deep wounds which have opened up in our society, will heal as quickly as maybe we would all like them to do so, no?
What of the GSLP? 4 years ago, Mr. Bossano stood on the stage triumphantly with 73% support. Where has it all gone?
Well, I've been asking myself that question tonight, the dramatic collapse of the GSLP vote. I think Mr. Bossano should be doing a lot of soul searching tonight, and the GSLP, because if they want to become an alternative to the G.S.D, they should start rebuilding their party base, perhaps even reviewing some aspects of the manifesto, and to provide an alternative to what we have now, because after all, that's the way democratic parliamentary systems work. You need a strong government and an opposition that can take over when the need arises. So I think that the GSLP have to look very, very hard inwardly and carry out an exercise of self-criticism, and try to provide themselves the party that generated so much expectation and hope not so long ago,
Mr. Bossano, Joe Bossano, was being billed as the be-all and end-all of the party. Vote Gibraltar, vote GSLP, but vote Bossano above all else. Has this injured him much? He claims not to have.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm sure Mr. Bossano can give excellent explanations to what has happened tonight. But my own humble opinion is that the moment a political party becomes fashioned in the image of one man, it can be, it can go either way. It only depends whether that figure stays, in the public favor, and if it doesn't, it can lead to the collapse, as we have seen, of the bloc vote. No?
He claimed earlier when I spoke to him that it does not mean the collapse of the GSLP party at all, but really at the end of the day, after having billed him as the leader of the GSLP and as I said, be all and end all of that party, to think that with all the soul searching that you mentioned earlier towards, as we enter this legislature now, that eventually before the next election campaign, the GSLP might be finding for a new leader to have a new image and try to woo back those voters who've left them this time?
Well, I think the GSLP will have to lock themselves up in the headquarters and analyze the past 4 years, all the things that have been happening in Gibraltar, and it's up to it's an exercise which they and Mr. Bossano is an intelligent man. He's quite capable of finding the solutions he needs, to bring the party out of this crisis. But at the moment, I think the GSLP is a party which seems down. Whether it's down and out remains to be seen. I think that Mr. Bossano has enough energy and capabilities to be able to come back. He's a street fighter. He's said it enough times. So I'm sure that he's still got the fighting spirit in him. No?
Okay, Paco, many thanks indeed. What's going to be the headline in the Chronicle today?
Well, I think it's going to be like a clear victory for G.S.D, new chief minister, and 4 years of expectation and even hope, see what comes,
Okay, Paco, we look forward to reading your article. I know you're busy writing the front page this morning once the full votes have been announced by Dennis Figueras, so we'll catch a bit later on. Thank you. Paco Oliva of the Gibraltar Chronicle, one of their reporters, and indeed charged today with having to write that so important and historic front page for Gibraltar's Daily, which has been going on for years, as we know, one of the oldest newspapers around. Right, so we're still waiting for the full results to be announced by Dennis Figueras, and some of the counting rooms still being are still busy because not all the counting has been finished. And what we're going to do while we wait for that is go and talk to a few people here, because there's lots of happy faces today in this auditorium at the John Mackintosh Hall as we await those results. And there's one man here whose son has actually won a government seat in the House of Assembly, and it's Jose Neto, who we're going to talk to now live. Jose, good morning to you and your son there as a government minister now. What's your reaction after so many years of your life dedicated to work in Gibraltar?
I'm very happy, because I think that this government is bound to create respect for all citizens in Gibraltar, and that is enough, that people should be respected.
You've been quite sympathetic of the G.S.D. in the past. What made you change? Because I suppose you were backed a Workers' Party previously.
Well, the situation is that, the GSLP, to me, is not a socialist party. They have let the workers down, and therefore, you see, I will always be fighting for the working class since I die. And these, I consider them my enemy now.
Okay, Jose, many thanks indeed, and congratulations to you because of your son. All right, he's now there in government, and that's Jose Neto, former TGW district officer. Right, we're going to go back to the set now and more from our main studio scenario upstairs.
And so we're back on the set here, and Ben Brown of the BBC is with us. Ben, you've been in this sort of thing before. What do you think?
It's a very exciting election, actually. I've been to Gibraltar before, but I've never covered an election here. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go, and the results has taken certainly me by surprise, certainly the extent of the landslide. We weren't expecting that. And there's been a lot of interest in Britain. We've been doing a lot of coverage for the BBC, but a lot of newspapers too have been giving it quite a lot of coverage.
You say the slightly surprised, but not totally surely, because the polls were indicating that it was going to turn out this way.
Yeah, but I think the extent of the victory, the margin has surprised us. And I was quite surprised too by the campaign, pretty tough talking. As I say, I hadn't covered an election here, but very tough campaigning, but harsh words said by all sides.
Do you think that's the way it should be or not?
Well, I suppose if you want a vibrant democracy, you've got to expect quite a lot of ferocious campaigning in an election like this, and it was very bitterly contested. I was surprised by how bitter it was. But if you want a real democracy, I suppose you have to have that kind of confrontation between the parties.
You must have heard, of course, that it's been said that the G.S.D. is better for the UK. What do you think?
I think certainly there will be quite a lot of relief in the corridors of the Foreign Office this morning. You can almost hear the sighs of relief that Mr. Bassano is out of office, because I do think the diplomats in London found him a pretty difficult customer to deal with on occasions.
But isn't that similar to what the UK does with the European Union? If they've got something that doesn't suit them, they don't budge.
I think that's a fair point, absolutely. I'm just saying that I think the officials in Whitehall always want an easy life, and I think that they will enjoy working with Mr. Caruana more than they probably enjoyed working with Mr. Bassano.
Do you think also that they will be soft on Spain? That's another thing that's been bandied about.
Well, the question of Spain is obviously difficult for Britain. It's a European Union partner. I think the current government in Britain, although it's taking a tougher line on Europe, doesn't want to alienate the Spanish. Whether the new government here is going to be soft on Spain, I personally don't see anything wrong with a dialogue with the Spanish, as long as there aren't concessions on the issue of sovereignty. And I think that's how the Foreign Office certainly will see it.
Right. Ben, I think we'll leave it there. You probably have a lot of work to do.
Thank you very much.
That was Ben Brown of the BBC, and now it's back to Gerard, who's going to speak to some more people, I understand.
Well, another international journalist is Elizabeth Nash of UK newspaper The Independent, and Elizabeth is their Madrid correspondent. Now, Elizabeth, good morning. And what has been your impression of this campaign in Gibraltar?
Well, it's been a very exciting, toughly fought, passionately fought campaign, very stimulating, and a very decisive and interesting result.
Comes shortly after an election in Spain where the socialists lost power as well. Would you say that that is a trend? Socialists losing to conservatives, although perhaps you might argue that in Britain it's the other way around.
Well, what does seem to be the case is that there's a process of change going on. Governments that have been in power for several years, well, in all three cases, are in the process of changing. Two have gone, maybe another one's yet to go.
What has been your impression of the two leading figures here, Joe Bossano and Peter Caruana?
Well, this is what's so interesting about Gibraltar, is that the two main contenders are such definite and such powerful personalities. Perhaps this is a characteristic of Gibraltar politics. It certainly makes it stimulating and interesting to observe from outside, and it gives a great definition to the face of Gibraltar internationally.
Peter Caruana has won. How do you think that that will be received from by your readers, if at all they can opinion on it, because after all they are in another country?
Well, readers of all the British press are very, very interested in what's going on in Gibraltar, and I think they'll be quite very, very interested in the fact there's been a decisive change and a decisive opinion given by the Gibraltarians, that although the campaign was closely fought, the result seems to have been quite conclusive, and that I think is always positive from the point of view of the international definition of a country.
Now, I suppose that you brush shoulders with Spanish journalists and other foreign journalists in Madrid. What have they been saying about the Gibraltar elections in the run-up to the 16th of May?
I think many Spanish observers share the view that sovereignty is the main issue, but a lot of Spaniards in the street, as it were, seem to favour a more day-to-day cooperation with Gibraltarians. In other words, they're all human beings.
So do you think that there is a changing attitude in Spain, regardless of the fact that there's a more hard-line government now in place?
Well, again, I think the change in Spain and the change of Gibraltar mean that there's a sort of awareness that perhaps there is a movement now onto a new stage, and perhaps there will be more contact and discussion, which the new Gibraltar government seem to want.
Sometimes us in Gibraltar, couched in 3.5 square miles, don't realise that there is some demand for information about Gibraltar abroad when we reach countries of 65 million in the UK or 38 million in Spain. But really, people do have an interest in what's happening here. It's considered the smallest democracy in Europe.
What struck me very much is that there is this close, mainly harmonious community. There were some differences, I think, during the campaign, but by comparison with British or Spanish election campaigns, the Gibraltarian community is very friendly and harmonious amongst itself, and the divisions seem to be far less dramatic than they are outside.
Okay, Elizabeth, many thanks indeed for talking to us today. Thank you. Elizabeth Nash, she's the Madrid correspondent for The Independent. And the applause there is for Mr. Caruana's wife, who has just come in, wife of Gibraltar's new Chief Minister. That's why the applause. So that we might take that to be an indication that Peter Caruana himself will shortly be arriving. We've already seen that some of the other boxes have also been brought into the auditorium. They're now in the stage. And we're waiting basically for the returning officer to also arrive and to give out the results. As I mentioned earlier, the G.S.D supporters were asked to move to one side and make space on one of the tiers here for GSLP supporters. Those are still empty. None have, or at least very few, have made an appearance here today. Either has their leader, Joe Bossano. So the defeated leader and the winner.
Agent Terry Cartwright, good morning to you.
Good morning, Christine.
Just how intense has that campaign actually been?
It's been extremely intense, but thank goodness I've had a formidable team of workers and who have put their heart and soul into the whole campaign. And of course, without them, it wouldn't have been possible. So really the thanks and the credit go to the team.
But has it really been an upward struggle for you? Especially to project the GSD in the manner, of course, in which you wanted.
I wouldn't describe it as a struggle. It was a challenge. I think if you're committed to something, strongly committed, you can move mountains, and I think that's what we did.
As I say, you've lived very closely with the team over the past few months. Some of them new to politics to a degree. How stressful has it been?
For me, it's been quite stressful, but then I'm quite a nervous person. I don't take stress very easily. But at the end of the day, it's all worthwhile.
What's been the mood of the party as the elections have been drawing closer?
I think we've all been quite optimistic. We've all been happy. We believed in what we were doing. And I think, you know, that's shown in the way that people have given of themselves and their time.
As far as the polls are concerned, obviously the writing was on the wall if they were to be believed. But at what point did the party believe?
I think the last poll did it, the Panorama poll. Well, that's when that's the poll that influenced me most, I think. But I've been pretty convinced for many, many months that we would win this election. I had a gut feeling about it, and I just went ahead and did things in a very positive way. And I think that reflects on your helpers and your teammates. And we just got down to it and did what we had to do.
The margin has surprised people. It's been quite a large margin. Apart from that, the fact that obviously, as you were saying, it's been a while now that I think you're all fairly confident. But looking back, what has been the best moments of the whole campaign as opposed to the worst?
I think the best moments, of course, have been the John Mackintosh Hall meeting and the bridge in Smith Dorrien Avenue, Winston Churchill Avenue. But as far as the margins are concerned, Christine, I don't think I really know what the absolute figure is.
How will the party be celebrating?
Well, we're going to have breakfast this morning, and then I think most of us will rest. I'll open the office for a few hours, and then we'll have to think about that during the course of next week.
No longer the election agent, do you revert to the party secretary?
Well, that's my role, party secretary, so I suppose I shall stay in that role for some time.
Thank you very much. Terry Cartwright, the election agent for the G.S.D, earning a well-deserved rest, going off to get her breakfast in a moment. Let's move back up to Set and have a word with Richard.
Welcome back to election 96 and the count. Stephen, what are you still doing here? It's 10 to 9.
The last couple of hours is always the worst. We were told 9 o'clock. Let's hope that they actually manage to keep to that, and then we can go on too much longer than that. Maybe we can just remind viewers that the count was at 80% the last that we knew. We haven't been given any updated figures since, I don't know, about a couple of hours ago at least.
At least a couple of hours.
At least a couple of hours. And the figures at that stage showed a clear lead for the GSDs. Since then, of course, we know that they're going to form the next government of Gibraltar. They are expected to be sworn in sometime this afternoon. The GSD had 53% of the vote compared to 41.6% for the GSLP, with the National Party on 4.97% of the votes. Mr. Cumming, independent candidate, Peter Cumming, had 0.15%. These, of course, still unofficial figures. We're expecting the official confirmation, the official announcement within the next 10-15 minutes. But of course, there's no way of knowing when the final ballot box will be brought into the hall, and the returning officer, Dennis Figueres, will be in a position to give us that final announcement. But Richard, coming back perhaps to the results, it still is, there is one thing that we don't know, and that is who's going to top the poll, of course.
That's exactly right. Yes, we've had, as we were saying earlier, in case you just joined us or joined us later on in the evening, that we've been having two predictions, one from the GSLP camp, one from the GSD camp, where we've had different leaders. We've had Caruana with one and Peter Montegrifo with the other. We've also had different candidates of the GSLP that have been dropped out. I think in one was Mr. Perez, and in another one, Gold. We're still looking for that 20% that we still don't have. So we really don't know what's going to happen as far as that's concerned.
Yes, in fact, maybe I can start just running through the list. It's, of course, a provisional list that we have at this stage. As we were saying, Peter Montegrifo is top of the poll, followed by Peter Caruana. Bernard Linares is third, followed by Hubert Corby. Then we have Keith Asopardi, Jaime Neto, Joe Holiday, and the last candidate, at least provisionally on this list, is Ernest Brito. 6,173 was the votes at that stage for Peter Montegrifo, the top number of votes, and the lowest, of course, was Mr. Brito's at 5,732. Comparing it perhaps with the number of votes cast at the last election, and there of course in 1992 the poll was topped by Joe Bossano, the GSLP leader, who went on to become Chief Minister and to lead the GSLP government for 4 years. Mr. Bossano pooled a massive 9,228 votes 4 years ago. Of course, the GSLP did obtain a landslide on that occasion with 73%, but Mr. Bossano's personal vote was no less than 9,228. It doesn't seem as if the person that eventually tops the poll tonight, or rather this morning now, will have as many votes as that, because the last count that we had was Peter Montegrifo with 6,000 odd, and at that stage the number of ballot papers that had been counted were 13,000 out of a total of 16,168. The turnout, of course, has also been very, very large this year, a record turnout, Richard.
That's right, yes. Another thing that we must mention is that it's been polarized this year, and one wonders then if there is room for electoral reform. They talk so much about the best brains and good people stay out.
Well, of course, if the National Party had come in, then we would have had electoral reform. But I think that it's a case of parties promising that when they're in opposition. When they actually win using that system, they probably won't be so keen to reform it. But I think that there are developments down in the hall.
Well,
I can't make them out though. I
most-
believe that Jared, in fact, I think has somebody with him down the hall, does he? Or
Well,
something else?
we have noticed that most of the boxes, I mean, there's meant to be what, 16 boxes?
Well,
from the
16 counting rooms.
Plus the, yep. So there must at least be about 16 boxes on the stage there. So we really don't know what's happening. We understand that the GSLP is now making their way to the auditorium. They have one side of the theatre there set aside for them. No doubt they'll be headed by the leader of the opposition-elect, Joe Bossano, his opposition members and supporters.
It certainly must be an indication, if they are actually coming up to the theatre, that the announcement is imminent. We would expect, I don't imagine that the GSLP candidates would want to be in the hall much longer than necessary. They're obviously going to be heavily outnumbered by the G.S.D supporters, but they will put on a brave face and they will make an appearance here for the official announcement. And I can just see former Minister Joe Pilcher arriving. Maybe Jared down in the hall has a better view of things.
No, he doesn't, but it all seems to be very cordial. The room was standing and clapping.
It's very interesting, Richard, actually, that they're getting a standing ovation from the GSD supporters. A very sporting gesture. Maybe a fitting way to end the campaign, to end the election after all the bitterness, all the acrimony that we've had, is to see this reconciliation here this morning. A very moving moment, I would think.
Very moving indeed. I think I tend to remember that this tends to happen at most.
Indeed, and Richard, if you notice, some of the GSLP supporters are applauding back. This is very nice. It's just the right way, just the right tone in which to end the general election.
Nobody seems to be tired enough not to clap. Everybody seems to be pretty awake, and it's all very cordial, well behaved.
That's right. Maybe a sign that the next 4 years will not be as confrontational as some people are thinking that it will be. At any rate, it seems to have got off on the right foot from what we're seeing at the moment.
And they keep on streaming in. One wonders where they're all going to get to. I hope the fire brigade doesn't tell us that they have to stop. We noticed also that on stage...
The returning officer, yes, is ready to make the announcement, I think, Richard.
Joe Bossano still has not made an appearance.
I think he wants to keep us on tenterhooks just a little bit longer. I don't know whether perhaps he has a touch of the theatrical about him. I think he may just be waiting for everybody that's trying to get into the hall to actually arrive. And some of the candidates are there, aren't they?
Juan Carlos Perez is coming through, and there's Juan Carlos Perez.
Mr. Corrado as well, the chairman of the GSLP, has made his entrance ahead.
Joshua Gabay.
Joshua Gabay is there too.
Clive.
Yes, Clive George is there. They're all coming in. it must be, of course, a difficult moment for them, and we have to spare them, of course, in this moment. They have been defeated. It was expected to be a very close fight. In the event, it hasn't worked out as close as people thought. And there's Mr. Bolsonaro. There is the GSLP leader, Bolsonaro, and future leader of the opposition for the next 4 years. And just look at the reception he's getting from a predominantly G.S.D. filled hall. Quite amazing.
Well, I think it speaks for itself that everybody wants peace, and everybody's sitting down ready for the announcements.
Indeed, they are. It should be any moment. Now I see some movement behind the curtain up on the stage. It shouldn't take long now. The hall still seems to be not quite full. I still see 1 or 2 stragglers at the end there trying to get in.
Now, I can't see this side, Stephen. The G.S.D. hasn't made an appearance yet, at least the leader.
I haven't seen, that's true, Richard, but our vision here is rather restricted, is a bit limited. So I don't know whether they've crept in unnoticed, but certainly I don't think they're there yet. I imagine it would possibly be the thing to do is to have the losers come in first, and then obviously the winners. Jared, I think, has more news downstairs.
Yes, and in fact there is only standing room only now here in the auditorium. Many people from Juan Carlos Perez here at the very front through to all the other GSLP party activists who have now come in are actually standing on the aisles. Only standing room only now available. Joe Bolsonaro has taken a seat at the very front of the auditorium. He is laughing, he's smiling, and he is talking to his wife Rose, and also in the front seat next to her is Mari Monterrifo, and the election agent for some of the candidates, Peter Caruana. Others who we can see from here, Joshua Gabay and Albert Isola, 2 of their new recruits. We'll have to find out, in fact, whether they've actually made it into the opposition, because only 7 seats will be taken by the GSLP. That means that one of these gentlemen, or lady, will, I'm afraid, not go into the House of Assembly. We're now waiting for the arrival of Peter Caruana. And that's lots of applause now, because something is happening around my back, but I'm not quite sure what that is. But certainly a lot of applause there as people await the arrival of Gibraltar's new government. Well, a lot of applause from the GSD supporters for the GSLP when they came in. Now the GSD supporters are making it quite known that they are in power, to the silence of the GSLP members. And here they are. These are the victors tonight, beginning with Keith Azopardi, Ernest Brito, Hubert Corby, Bernard Linares, Joe Holliday. Here's Peter Monterrifo, accompanied by his wife, and Jaime Neto, followed by Gibraltar's Chief Minister-elect, Peter Caruana, who acknowledges the applause and the chanting of GSD by his supporters here. Peter Caruana just walking past me and going to take his place on the side. And a warm embrace for Terry Cartwright, who's worked very hard over the last 3 weeks at least with the election campaign. Emotional times for her, a kiss from her son, and also a kiss from some kisses there. Kisses everywhere, because they're all very happy here. Thumbs up, the GSD have made it. And Peter Caruana, the Peter Monterrifo cannot hide the emotion in their faces, the joy. They are absolutely beaming. A lot of noise, and Peter Caruana now asking his supporters to quieten down, because shortly the returning officer, who's already at the lectern, is going to announce the winners. So Dennis Figueras, in fact, arranging his microphones. No seating available for the winning GSD candidates, including the new Chief Minister standing next to me. But there you are. He arrives last, and no place for him. Here's Dennis Figueras.
Good morning. It's been a long... It's been a long night, and I'll go straight into formalities. And I must say that I, Dennis Figueras, being the returning officer for the election of members of the House of Assembly, of Gibraltar, held on the 16th day of May 1996, hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the said election is as follows. Armstrong Emery, Liana Patricia, 543.
Of the National Party.
Asopardi Keith, 8,206.
G.S.D.
Baldacchino, Joseph Louis, 6,940.
GSLP.
Bajocchi, Anthony Albert, 507.
GNP.
Borda, Paul Christopher James, 552.
GNP.
Bossano, Joseph John, 7,396.
Joe Bossano, GSLP leader.
Bossino, Damon James, 794.
GNP.
Brito, Ernest Michael, 8,093.
GSD.
Caruana, Peter Richard, 8,561.
Peter Caruana, leader of the G.S.D.
Corby, Hubert Alfred, 8,263.
GSD.
Cumming, Peter Andrew, 214.
Independent.
Gabai Joshua, 6,744.
GSLP.
Garcia, Joseph John, 1,679.
GNP leader, Dr. Joseph Garcia.
Gold, Clive Peter, 6,483.
GSLP.
Holiday, Joseph John, 8,094.
GSD. Very emotional Joe Holiday there.
Isola Albert, 6,768.
GSLP.
Linares, Bernard Anthony, 8,350.
GSD.
Linares, Stephen Ernest, 809.
GNP candidate.
Montegrifo, Maria Isabel, 6,876.
GSLP.
Montegrifo, Peter Cecil, 8,565.
G.S.D. Deputy Leader.
Moore, Robert, 6,661.
GSLP.
Neto, James Joseph, 8,066.
GSD.
Perez, Juan Carlos, 6,597.
GSLP.
Tunbridge, Annette, 500.
GNP.
Victor, Elio, 548.
GNP candidate.
And I do hereby declare that the said Peter Cecil Montegrifo, Peter Richard Caruana, Bernard Anthony Linares, Hubert Alfred Corby, Keith Asopardi, Joseph John Holliday, Ernest Michael Brito, James Joseph Neto, Joseph John Bossano, Joseph Louis Baldacchino, Maria Isabel Montegrifo, Albert Isola, Joshua Gabay, Robert Moore, Juan Carlos Perez are duly elected members of the House of Assembly.
So clearly the GSD with Peter Montegrifo ahead of the GSD's leader take the 8 government seats. The GSLP led by Joe Bossano take the 7 opposition seats. So now again to the clamour of the assembled GSD and indeed some GSLP supporters. Peter Caruana stands proudly as Gibraltar's Chief Minister-elect.
Ladies and gentlemen, please bear with me for a few more minutes as I wish, and I think it's my duty, to thank the candidates for their courtesy and cooperation, the election agents who have been most helpful at all times, the Director of Education, Youth Officer, and head teachers whose schools and youth clubs I have used as polling stations, the Scouts for having made available their headquarters at Lineward Road, John Murillo of JBS and his staff, the Director of the John Mackintosh Hall and staff, as well as the police for their invaluable help at all times. There are many other persons and organizations, too numerous to mention, who have helped with the arrangements for this election. To them all, my sincere thanks. The success of any organization is due to good teamwork, and I'm of course particularly grateful to the polling and counting teams who have performed in the highest traditions as I was saying, who have performed in the highest tradition of the civil service of Gibraltar. A particularly well done to the roving presiding officers and teams who have trotted throughout Gibraltar for the whole day, taking the ballot boxes to our elderly citizens. I think I think I would be failing in my duty if I did not make special mention of the following persons who have helped me from the very beginning. The senior presiding officer, Eugene House, the counting supervisor, John de Soysa, ably assisted by Pepe Canessa, Dennis Reyes, Joey Alves, Jenny Cuello, Tony Pereira, and John Sanchez. I promised His Excellency when he left this morning to pass on a word of congratulations to the civil service for their efficiency, good humor, and dedication to duty. I think I should welcome the leaders of the three parties if they want to come up to the stage and say a few words, and I think we should start with the GNP.
And Damon Bocino is going to address the audience here in lieu of Dr. Joseph Garcia, it seems. So Damon Bocino takes to the lectern, not having been elected, of course.
I have to give my apologies for my leader. I've lost him. But it's my first election, and I am proud to be a Gibraltarian today because 88% of the people of the electorate have voted, and they have voted in a government. And I hope, and this has been the message of the National Party throughout, I hope that we all as Gibraltarians can live together and that we all move in the same direction. Obviously, I would like to thank the hard work done by Dennis and his team, everybody in my party, obviously the activists of my party, and I'd like to give a very special thanks to you, the people of Gibraltar. Thank you.
Damon Bocino addressing the audience here at the John Mackintosh Hall, his party having a poor showing, and his leader not present at the moment, Dr. Joseph Garcia not here. Damon Bocino took the stand instead.
The leader of the GSLP, please, Mr. Joe Bossano.
Joe Bossano will now address the audience. He is Gibraltar's leader of the opposition-elect.
As Damon said, it is of course enormous satisfaction that such a high proportion of those eligible to vote exercise that right, and although I don't agree with the choice that they have made, as a committed parliamentarian of 24 years, we stand by the fundamental principles of parliamentary democracy, and there is now an elected government and I expect to lead Her Majesty's loyal opposition in Gibraltar, of which I've already got considerable experience, so they can expect a tough time. I will say something that I said to the press when I came in, which has been, I think, a point of difference in our approach, and that is, we will be critical of policies, but not of personalities, and irrespective irrespective of the source of any differences between the government of Gibraltar and the government of the United Kingdom, we will always take the side of the government of Gibraltar. I wish to congratulate Mr. Caruana on his success, and obviously to thank the returning officer and all the staff that have proved once more that they're capable of handling an election irrespective of the numbers involved, with an efficiency and professionalism that is second to none in any other British dependency.
Joe Bassano, the leader of the Gibraltar Socialist Labour Party, now Gibraltar's leader of the opposition-elect. He's addressed the audience here, the supporters of, mainly of the G.S.D, and also his own supporters were giving him a standing ovation as he takes the front seat next to his wife at the front of the right-hand side of the auditorium.
Can I now invite the leader of the G.S.D, Mr. Peter Caruana?
Gibraltar's Chief Minister-elect, Peter Caruana. To the acclamation of his supporters, the relative silence of other party supporters, he takes the lectern now to address those people who have supported him in this ballot on the Rock of Gibraltar.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all the candidates that have taken part in this election, I would like to thank all government departments involved in facilitating and laying on the facilities for the election, all the schools and the head teachers of the schools and all the other places, the Boy Scouts that have made their premises available to us. I would like to thank the director of the John Mackintosh Hall for once again laying on the splendid facilities that he does here. I would like to thank the Royal Gibraltar Police for ensuring that the events during the campaign and tonight and I would like to thank the returning officer and his staff, especially, but not exclusively, the polling and counting agents who have worked tirelessly during an extremely long night to count our votes, to supervise the elections, and to put us in the position that we are very late in this morning after they've put in many, many, many hours of very tiresome work. I would like you now to offer them a particular round of applause. I would like to thank the candidates in those parties that have opposed us, and indeed the official activists and the official helpers in the GNP and the GSLP for the courtesy and the consideration and the good sportsmanship that they have shown us throughout this campaign. I would very especially like to thank the members and activists of the Gibraltar Social Democrats that have taken the party from very humble beginnings 6 years ago, from an opposition last time round to the spectacular success in just 5 short years. Without your effort and without your enthusiasm and without your help, none of it would have been possible. Thank you very much.
More chanting from the G.S.D, more chanting from the G.S.D supporters, included amongst those Peter
Finally, but by no means least, I would like to thank the people of Gibraltar for participating so massively in this democratic process. The people of Gibraltar, together with the returning officer and his staff, have demonstrated to the world that in respect of the conduct, organization, and carrying out of a general election campaign, we need learn nothing from anyone outside of our shores. On the 30th of May 1992, I was sitting in my car with my daughter Georgina and my son Michael, stopped at the traffic lights outside the Royal Bank of Scotland in Corral Road. And I said to him, "Are you both happy that Daddy," I said to them both, "are you both happy that Daddy is in politics?" And Michael put his arms around my neck from behind and said, "Daddy, I want you to be Chief Minister of Gibraltar." The very next day, as you all know, he tragically died in an accident, but his words have echoed in my head every day of my life since, and without that encouragement, without that commitment, knowing that that is what he wanted, I would never have been able to stick this out through these difficult times. And I dedicate And I dedicate all the work that I will do for the people of Gibraltar in the next 4 years to his eternal memory. During this campaign, the question was raised as to whether the people of Gibraltar should trust me with the government of Gibraltar. I want, from the deepest reaches of my heart, to thank the people of Gibraltar for so massively answering that question and therefore relieving me of the cross that others have sought to burden me with during the last 5 years. The people of Gibraltar will learn and realize that they have not misplaced their trust. This has been a long and divisive campaign. All elections in a democracy are, by their very nature, divisive. The electorate has spoken. It has chosen, by a majority in excess of 50%, a government. We will serve the people of Gibraltar in their totality. The time has come for this community now to work to heal its differences, to build a prosperous, secure Gibraltar together for the benefit of all of us in Gibraltar. And I, for my part, pledge that no one who has identified themselves with our political opponents has anything whatsoever to be fearful of. When I say that we want to govern Gibraltar so that there is equality of opportunity for everybody, I mean everybody, whether they are G.S.D., or supportive of any other political party. I would like to urge you all to support the G.S.D. during the next 4 years in all the very exciting and adventurous things that we will do to get this economy working so that we create wealth and prosperity for all members of our community, so that building on that economic prosperity we can push forward in terms of our decolonization with confidence and security that we are building a house on solid foundations. Thank you very much indeed. I have to rush off to do an interview with GBC. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Well, there you are. Took the words right out of my mouth. Peter Caruana, who's given his first address as Chief Minister-elect, leaves the stage, leaves the platform now to be escorted upstairs to our main set where Stephen Nish is waiting for him to grant his first full interview as Chief Minister of Gibraltar in an elect capacity at the moment until, of course, he is sworn in by the governor, and we understand that to be able to be happening very shortly this morning, if not early this afternoon. So that's going to be happening soon. The auditorium now emptying. The first leave, I suppose, because that's because they're closer to the door than anybody else, are the GSLP supporters, and followed shortly by the G.S.D. people. Their supporters, also some GNP candidates too, who were in the hall, are now leaving. So it's been an emotional moment. Peter Caruana dedicates his next 4 years to the memory of his son, who died tragically about 4 years ago after a riding accident. And he said that the day before he had said, "Dad, you will be the Chief Minister of Gibraltar." And with that memory, he is dedicating that to his son. So Peter Caruana on his way now to the set upstairs, where he'll be met by Stephen Nish as the people. Some gloomy faces because they have lost this election insofar as the GSLP is concerned, but also some very beaming faces and very happy faces insofar as those people who are supporters of the Gibraltar Social Democrats, who will now form the government of Gibraltar. It's taken Joe Bolzano 8 years as Chief Minister, taking over from the AACR in 1988. 8 years later, he is sent back to opposition, to the opposition benches, and the GSD, the Social Democrats, take over from him. As I said, the swearing in of ministers might be taking place later on today in the presence of His Excellency the Governor. But of course it doesn't end there, because there is the official swearing in of the House of Assembly in the, I presume one could call it the state opening of Gibraltar's Parliament later on in a few weeks' time, I presume, whilst things are prepared there. And that is when Peter Caruana will take charge of Gibraltar's Parliament, the House of Assembly. All the candidates were at one in saying that work started today to put their manifesto in operation. They will be holding Council of Ministers meetings later on today, no doubt after they've caught 40 winks, because it has been a very long night and a long day yesterday for all of them who were still canvassing support outside the polling stations. And then after that, throughout the night here at the John Mackintosh Hall. And there you are. But this broadcast could not end without the Chief Minister of Gibraltar's first interview on GBC as Chief Minister, Peter Caruana, with Stephen Nish.
Yes, indeed, with me here now, the Chief Minister-elect, of course, and Chief Minister by this afternoon, Peter Caruana. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you very much indeed.
A very moving speech, Mr. Caruana, dedicating it to the memory of your late son, of course.
Well, it has been something that has been on my mind for 4 years, and I think I can sincerely say that had it not been for those words echoing around in my head for 4 years, I might not have been able to stick it out and be here sitting in this chair today.
What are your feelings at this moment?
My feelings are of elation. Obviously, I am very proud of myself and of the whole GSD team. I am eternally grateful to the people of Gibraltar for deposing their trust in me, notwithstanding the fact that a campaign has been fought on the basis that I am not to be trusted. I launched an appeal to the people of Gibraltar to reject that. They have done so, and I am eternally grateful to them for that.
You used very emotive language. You said that the cross had been lifted from your shoulders.
Well, historical facts are historical facts. I had never sought to deny the facts. What I have sought to deny is the interpretation placed on them. And I have sought to persuade the electorate that something that I did many years ago for my father-in-law was not representative of my politics, and I think the people of Gibraltar have accepted that. They have accepted my assurances on that, and that is why I am so grateful.
There was a historic turnout today, 88%. That says something about the quality, perhaps, of democracy in Gibraltar.
I think that the people of Gibraltar have demonstrated today that they recognize that this was a crucial election. I think they have accepted our message that this is a crossroads for Gibraltar, and the whole of Gibraltar has come out to participate in choosing which road away from that crossroad Gibraltar should take. And it was important that the whole of Gibraltar should choose that road. It was important that we should have the support of more than 50% of the electorate, which we have, and I can assure the electorate, both those that supported us and those who didn't support us for anxieties about whether we could be trusted on the Spanish issue, sleep comfortably in your beds. Gibraltar and you are entirely safe and secure in the hands of the G.S.D.
Mr. Bossano, of course, will be leader of the opposition. As from today, he's promised you a tough time as leader of the opposition. Are you relishing the challenge?
Sorry, was that half-time or full-time? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
He has actually promised you a tough time.
Oh, a tough time. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I would expect nothing more from Joe Bossano. He is a long and experienced parliamentarian. He's been in the House of Assembly a long time. One of my great difficulties in the last 4 years has precisely been pitting myself against him. He's got much more experience at the parliamentary game. I have enjoyed it. I like to think that I have given him a good run for his money in Parliament, and I look forward, frankly, to him doing the same to me, because I believe in the spirit of transparency and openness that I am going to introduce into government. There is a role for the opposition, but they will have an easier job than I have, because they're going to have more information, they're going to have more meetings of the House of Assembly, they're going to have more opportunities to put questions to me, they're going to have more committees of the House of Assembly through which to carry out the very dignified and important role of opposition in this democracy.
You spoke of the divisiveness that has existed in the course of the election campaign. Are you confident that the wounds that have emerged in the last few weeks can be healed?
We are going to do everything that we possibly can to heal those wounds. And the start that we will make is to put at rest the minds of people that may now be feeling vulnerable because they have openly identified with GSOP or with the GNP. We are going to start a healing process in this community. We are not going to be in any sense vindictive. When I say, and when we the GSD have said throughout this campaign, that we want equality of opportunity and openness, we meant for the whole of Gibraltar, regardless of whether you support the GSD or not.
What is the first thing, the first problem or the first issue that you're going to lay your hands on, that you're going to tackle when you take office?
Well, of course, we've got to choose, I've got to allocate the ministries and the portfolios. I've got to install each of the ministers in their offices and have them put their feet under their desk. We've got to find our feet within the government administration. The first thing that we will be dealing with is implementing some of our ideas to get employment in the private sector working.
You actually came second, just 4 votes behind Mr. Montegrifo. What's your feeling about that?
Well, Peter Montegrifo and I have got no difficulty on these issues. When I said during the campaign that the attempt to drive a wedge between us was wishful thinking on the part of our political opponents, I meant just that. I have had nothing but full support and help from Peter Montegrifo. He has topped this poll by 4 votes. I think he is to be commended and congratulated, given the things that have been said about him, about whether he was in it for the money, about whether he would leave it for the money. I think the people of Gibraltar have they could not have more loudly rejected that view of Peter Montegrifo, and now the people of Gibraltar will see the benefits that come to them from having a strong government with not one leader, but many men capable and of the caliber of being leader.
One last word perhaps to what do you think, above all else, that you owe this victory today?
I think that we owe the victory to the fact that the people of Gibraltar have accepted our vision for Gibraltar. They have accepted our vision about how we think that Gibraltar should be governed. They have accepted our vision about the economy and what is needed to get employment going. And they have accepted our vision about style of government. And I think that they have accepted our vision of the relative priority of economic prosperity and engaging in a confrontational struggle with Britain for a process of decolonization which is important and which we will certainly pursue both in London and at the United Nations, but which will not be pursued at a pace and in a manner which prejudices or harms our ability to create jobs and to get the private sector working.
One very final word, and this time I promise it is the last one. Are you going to be swearing in your new government today?
I'm going to go and see the governor later on this morning, as soon as this interview has finished, and we hope to be swearing the ministers on the government later this afternoon.
Mr. Caruana, Chief Minister-elect of Gibraltar, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
And that is where we end our marathon coverage of the elections of the Knights of the Counts here at the John Mackintosh Show. We've been with you for about 11 hours, I think. It feels like 11 hours at least, but it's been well worth it. It's been a privilege to be here today. I hope you've enjoyed our coverage, and of course we'll be back on your screens bringing you updates on the swearing in later today of the new government in Newswatch at 8:30. Thank you very much for joining us, and if you've managed to stay the whole course, a special thank you to you, and for now a very goodbye.